Welcome to Unit 4 of EDSE 510. This week our focus will be on identification, assessment, evaluation, and IEP development. So thus far in the course we've had a lot of focus on the legal perspective, some of the history of IDEA and special education, and some information on partnering with families. But we're now moving forward into more of the hands-on process of identifying students who are in need of evaluation for special education eligibility and the process that is involved in that. As you can see, we'll move forward into topics of free appropriate public education, the least restrictive environment, and then into a variety of theories and focus on different types of special education needs or eligibility categories, such as speech and language, components related to serious emotional disabilities or intellectual disabilities. So that's just a little sneak peek at what we have coming up in the course. However, right now we're going to keep our focus on that assessment component. So you'll notice that this week we have an assignment of collaboration questions, but there is not a formal discussion this week. So that's a little bit of a change of pace from what we have been doing. So Unit 4, remember the interview assignment is coming up. Thank you all for previously posting your draft questions. The most important thing I would say, just as we talk about the interview assignment, I'll pull it up again here. The most important thing I would say, which is also highlighted here in the assignment description, is please clearly hit upon all three of these areas in your interview. There are a lot of questions that we want to ask and gather information on from the person that we select to work with. But as long as you're hitting on all three of these categories, you're going to be doing fine with the assignment. If you want to add some things that are not particularly housed in any one of these areas, that's acceptable as well. But you just need to make sure that you do target these. Okay. Another comment, this needs to be a caregiver, remember, for the interview, and caregiver would be a family member or the student, the person themselves with exceptionalities. So this isn't just interviewing a teacher, okay, because that would be a different kind of an assignment, and that input also is very valuable. But somebody who's a staff member who's paid to work in a facility setting with somebody who has a disability, that's not what we're looking for. So the reason we say caregiver is because it's not always a parent. Obviously, oftentimes it may be, but this could be an older sibling with responsibility to care for and support the person. It could be a grandparent, an aunt or an uncle. There are lots of different options for who this might be. But we just really want to make sure that we're meeting that requirement because we're looking into the family experience here or the experience of the student, him or herself. So, Unit 4, again, we've got the activity, collaboration questions, but no discussion this week. Next unit, we will not have a discussion either, and even the unit after that. So you'll notice that we won't be encountering the discussion boards again until Unit 7. So this is a little bit of a break from discussions to merge back into the assignment component. So because the collaboration question assignment for Unit 4 is fairly brief and straightforward, now is a great time for you to be preparing for your interview assignment. Because as we all know, things change and move around and you might need to reschedule something or the person may not be available to meet as you had planned. So it's good to get it done sooner rather than later. And then you'll be able to also get in touch with any questions if you do have them. So the Unit 4 little introduction written lecture. And there is emphasis in this paragraph right here about the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law, so to speak. So that's why we want to not only focus on that statutory law or the written law, the regulations that you can find here at the link above, the letter of the law. We also want to be looking at the spirit of the law. What is the message behind the law? And that'll help us to make some of the tricky kind of quote unquote gray area feeling decisions that we might encounter in the field. If we know the law firmly and thoroughly, we can then make decisions based upon the letter of the law that are in alignment with the spirit of the law. So yes, we need to invite the parent or guardian. Yes, when we reach a certain age, we need to invite the student. But do we just invite a student and then not follow up on that? Or When the student does attend, for example, do we actively engage that student and involve the student to the best of that student's ability? So that would be an example of practicing within the spirit of the law for collaboration, self-determination within the IEP process for a student whenever possible. There is a video provided here for you related to the IEP meeting. A couple rather funny articles on top 10 most ridiculous comments heard at an IEP meeting. So you can review those if you choose. You do not have to. But these are just reminders of how wrong things can go in the IEP meeting sometimes and what we need to avoid at all costs. So I will leave that up to you. Student-led IEP meetings are a very popular topic. So this is the Undetermined website. There are several modules here that you can review that address the concept of student-led IEPs and self-determination in general. When you hear the word student-led IEP, and you'll find some other valuable information here as well, as you can see, disability history, parents supporting self-determination, or family members. Okay, so all of these would be valuable for your review. But in particular, when we're talking about student-led IEPs, oftentimes we might hear that, and at whatever level we're teaching or whatever the population may be, we might say, oh, I don't think that the student's at a place to lead the IEP meeting. I can barely lead the IEP meeting. And that very well may be true. There's a lot that goes into facilitating a meeting like this. So we need to break down what student-led could mean. It doesn't mean that the student needs to come in and do public speaking and go through the entire document and the team just needs to listen. Now, there are students where that does become the case as they get older, and that's really amazing, but it's not necessarily appropriate for everyone. Obviously, that's a unique situation. So a student may either not be at a place to do that or may not desire to do that. So instead, we need to kind of meet them in the middle and think about what is something that would be accessible to the student that he or she would be interested in doing and developing to have a partnership and self-determination within the IEP meeting process. Okay. So what that might look like is a student hitting on one section. One that I've seen very successful for students to engage in or even walk through verbally is the accommodation section, because it really is pretty tangible. It's pretty applied, and students can say, this is what I use, this is what works for me, this is when or why, this is what I need. It's a good place to start. Some of the concepts such as least restrictive environment or percentage of time in general education may be more abstract, or a student may not be as interested. For instance, the evaluation data, the progress monitoring probes, maybe not so much to start, but something like accommodations. It can even be fun to have a student go through the student strengths section when you begin the IEP meeting, because that's just a real great way to boost confidence. I have encountered, as I'm sure some of you have as well, students even at the middle school and high school level who in fact are not aware that they have IEPs. And it is so valuable to whatever extent appropriate, depending on the student and the situation, to help the student to understand and to be empowered by, this is what an IEP is, this is what it can do for me, this is what it means for me, and this is why this can be a valuable tool for me to be successful and to understand myself better. Some of the anger, frustration, or intimidation related to IEPs, the documents and the meetings, can be really alleviated by just clearer information for the student. And just as we've talked about when working with parents or guardians, family members, we need to really remove the jargon and the all of those acronyms and things that can cause more stress or anxiety and confusion. We need to speak in language that will be meaningful to the student, taking into consideration their perspectives at all times. This page is going to be focused on the IEP and the IFSP, of course, as we were talking about for students and before they're entering traditional school settings. This is an opportunity for you to review a couple different links. Obviously, writing IEP goals, that's a very important skill. So this is a presentation you can go through that's going to be talking about SMART goals. Pretty sure that everybody here is familiar with the concept of the SMART goal, but this is a presentation you can click through with various slides. You'll probably also notice with SMART goals that there are a couple different words that might get thrown in here for the acronym depending upon your source. But you get the main idea. So the S oftentimes is referred to as specific. You could also include strategic. M generally will be measurable. So when we're setting an IEP goal, obviously we want to be very clear on what we expect the student to do and to what extent or to what degree, making sure that it's appropriate for the student, or achievable might be another word you see here. Appropriately ambitious reminds us and draws us back to the consideration of rigor within the IEP, but not something obviously that's unreasonable and out of reach for realistic growth for the student. So we want to find that good balance there. The R for results driven. We may also see that the R is relevant. Again, you'll see different acronyms here, but this is just one for you to review. And then obviously one of the most important components of an IEP goal is that it's time bound. Because if I say the student will be able to write a given number of words, for instance, at a certain grade level, that's just an example. That might mean by the time that the student's 25 or 65, or it might mean next month. By when do we need to do this? The time-bound component is one of the most valuable and important parts of the IEP. So there's also a page here related to manifestation determination. There is a video that you can watch. I will go over it briefly here, and then you can take the time to check out the videos as well. But manifestation determination is a process that will take place when a student has received a certain number of disciplinary referrals, or we're approaching that 10 days of out-of-school suspension, and there's concern regarding behavior problems, discipline, potential lack of access, and relationship of those problems to the disability or the eligibility for special education, and the impact of that on the student in the school setting. So you might see that a student has been suspended for a certain number of days for physical assault, and we're approaching that 10 mark. At that point, the student is having a significant limitation of access to school, so we need to hold a manifestation determination meeting with the IEP team, go over what's in place, what has occurred, the eligibility that the student has for special education, and whatever that may be. It could be, for instance, a serious emotional disability, and then we might consider, is the behavior of concern directly a function of and in relation to that disability that the team has identified in eligibility? And if so, we can't bar the student from education for this unreasonable period of time when it is a manifestation. If it is ruled not to be a manifestation, which can occur as well, then the team would proceed with disciplinary consequences without taking that component into consideration. So manifestation determination is very important in situations of expulsion or in longer term suspensions where a student is missing school. There's also information here regarding students who are learning English in the inclusive classroom. So there will be several articles provided to you. You can choose one. Obviously, if you want to read more than one, you are completely welcome to do so. More information regarding response to intervention, and obviously, as we have discussed, IRIS modules are a beautiful thing. I encourage you to check them out because this is an important topic in our course that we have reviewed and will continue to do so. There is another link here for you with some support materials. This is Exceptional Children's Assistance Center. So these are tools and resources that you can review and share and provide. Just a couple documents that you can download, and many of these will be provided to you for free without even having to create an account. So it's just a good thing to bookmark for the future. And finally, we have our assignment, the collaboration question. So there are 5 questions listed for your reflection opportunity. You will choose one of the 5, and then you will write your response 2 to 4 paragraphs. And you'll need to cite your readings in APA 7th edition format at least 2 separate times to just show that you have that evidence base for your statements. And you will submit it here, just uploading the file in Canvas. So choose the question that's most interesting to you, most relevant to you. I'll just go over one of them. Number 3, for example, parents or guardians of children without disabilities may be complaining about an inclusive classroom or inclusive approaches. So what kinds of advice would you give to them regarding the benefits of inclusion for everybody, not only students with disabilities, but those who are not identified as having disabilities? So how would you respond to a parent expressing concern or frustration about that? For example, you might hear my students distracted, so create a response to that. That's just an example, number 3. You can choose any of the 5 and then cite your sources to support your statements. And that is it for the unit. Have a great week.